Chapter 1304. However, Shu Iluan did not leave. Instead, he slowly approached him. The smile on his face deepened. Wei Tianming looked at him in astonishment, then flew into a rage out of humiliation. "I told you to get out, did you hear me?" After saying that, he slammed his palm towards Shu Iluan's chest. However, before his hand could touch Shu Iluan, he felt a heart-wrenching pain in his dantian. Wei Tianming let out a mournful scream and slowly lowered his head. Then, he watched in disbelief as Shu Iluan's hand penetrated his dantian. That hand was holding his nascent soul neither too tightly nor too loosely. Like a cat teasing a mouse, he gently kneaded it. The pain on Wei Tianming's face turned into disbelief and fear. Why? Shu Iluan moved closer to him and whispered in his ear, "Do you still remember, last year, you guys killed?" Shu Iluan's voice was extremely soft. Wei Tianming was in so much pain that he almost couldn't hear what he was saying. Shu Iluan's last name entered her ears. Wei Tianming abruptly opened his eyes wide, his entire body trembling from extreme fear. You, who are you? How do you know her? Don't kill me. No. That has nothing to do with me. It's Di Yudao. It's all Di Yudao's fault. I beg you, spare me. Arth. Amidst Wei Tianming's terrified and desperate screams, Shu Iluan crushed his nascent soul and threw him to the ground. Then, a sly smile appeared on his gentle face. "Don't worry, I won't let anyone who harmed her back then get away with it." After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Shu Iluan waved his hand to eliminate all the auras in the room, and then he turned into black mist and left quietly. Not long after Shu Iluan left, the door was pushed open again. Di Yudao's figure appeared outside the door. However, as soon as he entered and saw the scene inside, he was so shocked that he almost screamed. Inside the room, there was a body placed on an armchair facing the door. The limbs of the body were chopped off and placed neatly on both sides. There was a huge bloody hole in his abdomen, and the reason for his crushing was scattered in every corner of the room. The eyes of the body were gouged out. A pair of ears were cut off and stuffed into the mouth. Even his nostrils had been reduced to 2 bloody holes. However, such a broken body was still alive. His chest was still heaving gently, and his throat made a terrible sound like a broken bellows. Di Yudao suddenly came back to his senses. He quickly closed the door and took out the ear from his mouth. "Tianming, is that you? What the hell happened?" However, as soon as the ear was taken out, Di Yudao discovered that Wei Tianming's tongue had also been cut off. He could not answer him at all. Di Yudao's expression constantly changed. He suddenly reached out and pressed his hand on Wei Tianming's head, pouring in spirit energy. What he wanted to do was to search her soul. This kind of soul searching would cause irreversible damage to Wei Tianming's divine sense and brain. But Di Yudao couldn't care less. He only wanted to know who had acted against Wei Tianming. Furthermore, he had used such cruel methods. For some reason, he had a bad feeling about this. Chapter 1305. Spiritual power poured in and quickly seized Wei Tianming's spirit. Just as he was about to pinch open the spirit to see what was going on, suddenly, an extremely cold primordial qi surged into his spiritual power and then drilled into his body. Puff! Di Yudao's reaction was extremely fast, and he quickly used his spiritual power to dodge. But he was still one step too late. His sense of perception was violently shaken, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood uncontrollably. Almost at the same time, Wei Tianming's body exploded with a bang. Blood and pieces of flesh splattered all over Di Yudao, making him look extremely disheveled. Di Yudao glared at Wei Tianming's scattered body and gritted his teeth. "Who are you? How dare you scheme against me?" His lips curled into a sinister smile. "Do you really think I won't be able to find you? When I find you, I will definitely tear you into pieces." Di Yudao brushed his body, and the blood and flesh on his body disappeared. He also changed his clothes. He quickly walked out of the yard, but his eyes were looking in the direction of the Starry School. The Alcade branch actually failed to seal this time. It seemed like he could only wait for the next chance. Alcade branch. Junior sister, You're finally back. 6th senior sister, we've already seen the Linglong list. You're already number 1. You're really amazing. Junior sister is the best. As soon as Muyan returned to the Alcade branch, she was warmly welcomed by her fellow disciples. Lung Yumor rushed up and wanted to give her a hug. But it affected the wounds on her body, and she couldn't help but gasp. 4th senior sister, how are you? Muyan quickly checked Lung Yumor's wounds. It would have been better if she didn't check. Once she did, her face darkened. She only felt that she didn't teach Hua Xiangrong a good lesson. Luo Yu and Chu Moli were fine, just external injuries. But Lung Yumor and the other 3 were injured by the Golden Core deacons. Luckily, the injuries weren't serious. They only needed to be treated with music to recover completely. Seeing the guilt in Muyan's eyes, Yun Ruohan quickly said, Junior sister, don't blame yourself. This has nothing to do with you. It was all thanks to you obtaining the exquisite wish that we were able to expel Wei Tianming and protect the Alcade branch. Ha ha ha. Little junior sister, you didn't see their expressions when the exquisite pagoda's spirit told them that Yi Liang Chen was the one who obtained the exquisite wish. It was hilarious. He, I know 6th senior sister must be 100 times better than that Hua Xiangrong. By the way, 6th senior sister, did Hua Xiangrong go to find you? Did she make things difficult for you? Muyan sneers, do you think she didn't make things difficult for me? It's just a pity that I didn't beat her up more. Everyone couldn't help but laugh. They could all imagine how miserable Hua Xiangrong was. If those people knew that Yap Liang Chen was Junmu Yang, they would be so angry that their noses would be crooked. After laughing, Ling Yusheng lowered his eyebrows and said softly, Little junior sister, you don't need to feel guilty. The one who should feel guilty is me. Wei Tianming came for me, I've implicated everyone. Old 5, what nonsense are you talking about? Lung Yumor punched him in the chest. Who are we? What implicated you? Chumoli says thoughtfully, I think that today's matter isn't aimed at little junior sister or old 5. What do you mean? Chapter 1306. On the contrary, I think that Wei Tianming's focus is on sealing the Yaoguang branch. We're just targets for them to attack in passing. Mu Yang couldn't help but turn her eyes to this desolate Yaoguang branch. During this time, because Di Mingju and the young martial uncle were absent, fewer people came to the Yaoguang branch. As a result, the place slowly became gloomy, as if there were ghosts wandering around. Mu Yang frowned slightly. Just like the first time she entered the Yaoguang branch, she always felt that there seemed to be something in the Yaoguang branch. She couldn't see it, couldn't touch it, but from time to time, it would make her feel a chill down her spine. What happened to the Yaoguang branch that year, that such a large branch would be abandoned like this? At night, Mu Yang is in a daze. She suddenly hears the sound of a zither. It's like weeping and complaining, desolate and resentful. But it also carries the solemnity of swallowing mountains and rivers. Mu Yang suddenly awakens from her sleep and asks Qi Huang and Little Phoenix, Did you hear the sound of the zither? Qi Huang lazily turns over, What's the sound? Junmu Yang, are you dreaming? Chocho also shakes his head in a daze, Beautiful sister, Chocho didn't hear anything. The sound of the zither in Mu Yang's ears has become a lot quieter, but she can still hear it if she listens carefully. For people who are good at music, the emotions and conduct expressed in the sound of the zither are the most difficult to conceal. This is the so-called seeking a bosom friend in high mountains and flowing water. As Mu Yang listens, a vague shadow seems to appear in front of her eyes. Wounded, riddled with holes, resentful and hateful. But that righteous spirit and unyielding character have never been obliterated. Mu Yang can't help but get up and follow the sound. She almost goes through the entire Yaoguang branch, but she still can't find the source of the sound. Moreover, Mu Yang feels that the sound of the zither is getting lighter and lighter, as if it is slowly dissipating between heaven and earth. She almost goes back in disappointment. But she suddenly stops in front of a huge cliff. She feels that the sound of the zither here seems to be a little louder, a little more solid. Mu Yang gently touches the cliff, and even uses the 7 Absolutes sword to cut it a few times. But she doesn't feel that it's any different from an ordinary cliff. The sound of the zither is getting weaker and weaker, as if it's desperate, as if it has given up everything. Mu Yang can't bear it anymore. She suddenly sits cross-legged, and the 7 absolutes sword in her hand turns into the Tian Mo Qin. His 10 fingers moved lightly, and the sound of the zither rose. Similarly, it was as if she was weeping and complaining, but there was no mournful wail. Instead, it was filled with sorrow. It was the same aura that could devour mountains and rivers, but there was no resentment or unwillingness. Instead, it pierced through the 9 heavens. Slowly, one light and one heavy, the 2 Guqin sounds blended together. You nourish me, and I nourish you. You warm me, I warm you. High mountains and flowing rivers, so close yet so far away, but a true heart is within reach. At the end of the song, the sun rose in the eastern sky. Mu Yan wipes the sweat from her forehead. Her body and spirit are somewhat exhausted, but she also feels indescribably hearty. She had never had a zither duel with someone to such a degree where they were on good terms and knew each other so well. She did not know who this person was, whether it was a man or a woman, young or old. But just from the tune of the zither, she felt that this person was a natural confidant of hers. She suddenly hears Qi Huang's voice. Jun Mu Yan, why are you suddenly playing the zither in the middle of the night? Mu Yang already understood, but she still couldn't help but ask, did you really only hear the sound of my zither, and not the sound of the other zither? Chapter 1307. Hee. You're stupid, your whole family is stupid. Believe it or not, this old mother will serve you with an itchy meat set. Mu Yan is too lazy to pay attention to Qi Huang, this brat, but she can't help but look back at the cliff. So, is she the only one who can hear this zither sound? Was someone playing, or was it really just her hallucination? Mu Yan goes all the way back to the side hall where her fellow apprentices live, and is about to go back to her room to sleep. She sees a flying sword falling from the sky, landing at the door of the side hall. Ouyang Qing comes down from the flying sword, his hair messy and his expression flustered. Seeing Mu Yan, he immediately rushes over. I heard that little Sheng was injured, how is his injury? Just as Mu Yan is about to reply, she sees another flying boat descending from the sky. Ouyang Mingzhu comes down from above and rushes towards Mu Yan with large strides, her beautiful face twisting. But seeing Ouyang Qing, she immediately restrains the hatred on her face and shows the same anxious look, as if she is very concerned about Ling Yusheng's safety. Seeing that Mu Yan doesn't answer, Ouyang Qing wants to rush over to find Ling Yusheng. But he is stopped by Mu Yan. Fifth brother's injury is indeed very serious, but what does this have to do with brother Ouyang? How can it have nothing to do with him? I said that I will protect little Sheng. Mu Yan sneers. When fifth brother was injured, where were you? Where were you when fifth brother was driven out of Yaoguang branch? And now you're telling me that you want to protect fifth brother? Ouyang Qing's face suddenly becomes a bit pale. He never thought that so many things would happen after he left for just 2 days. The day before yesterday, Ouyang Mingzhu suddenly came to find Ouyang Qing with a pale face, saying that she had a cultivation deviation because of an accident in her cultivation. She asked Ouyang Qing to accompany her back to the Ouyang family to find their father for treatment. Ouyang Qing finally reunited with Ling Yusheng and was reluctant to leave, but Ouyang Mingzhu is his younger sister after all. Now that she had a cultivation deviation and suffered internal injuries, he could only accompany her back to the Ouyang family. Ouyang Mingzhu's heart is really proud and sweet. She knows that her brother loves her the most. Who is that Ling Yusheng? How can he be compared with her and her brother's feelings? Once the two of them got off the flying boat, Ouyang Mingzhu immediately bounced over and held Ouyang Qing's arm. Many people in the Dub Branch courtyard looked at Ouyang Mingzhu and Ouyang Qing with unclear gazes. Ouyang Mingzhu, on the other hand, thought that these people were envious and jealous of her, which made her even more pleased with herself. He did not notice the pity in everyone's eyes. Ouyang Qing couldn't help but reprimand, your injuries have just healed, don't be too conceited. Why haven't you returned to Aliath Academy and had a good rest? Ouyang Mingzhu smiled coquettishly, but I'm happy. As long as she was with her brother, Mingzhu would be extremely happy. Mingzhu will never leave big brother. Ouyang Qing glanced at her, pulled out her hand, and scolded, don't talk nonsense, You will eventually get married. Ouyang Mingzhu pouted, I don't want to. How can other men be compared to brother? Mingzhu will accompany Big Brother for a lifetime and will never be separated from Big Brother. As she spoke, she was about to rush forward and grab his hand again. But this time, Ouyang Qing did not let her have her way. Instead, she impatiently took a few steps back. Chapter 1308. Ouyang, you're finally back. Something big happened in Yaoguang branch yesterday. Ouyang Mingzhu was overjoyed when she heard that. It seemed that her uncle's plan was successful. The annoying Ling Yusheng was finally driven out of the school. Once he left the protection of Starry School, it would be a piece of cake for her to find someone to kill that bitch. Ouyang Qing's expression changed greatly. She grabbed him and asked, What did you say? What happened in Yaoguang branch? How is Sheng? Is he hurt? Ouyang Mingzhu frowned, and the hatred in her heart towards Ling Yusheng increased a little. Fan Ting took a breath and said, It started yesterday. Hua Xiangrong, the junior sister of our school, entered the top 10 of the list of delicacy and said that she made an exquisite wish. Junior sister Hua's wish was to seal Yaoguang branch forever and expel all the people in the branch. Ouyang Qing gasped. No one knew better than him what an exquisite wish was. Because he was the last person who made an exquisite wish. His voice was trembling. Is Sheng of Yaoguang branch already? No. The people of Yaoguang branch fought with their lives to prevent Yaoguang branch from being sealed. However, both of them had suffered serious injuries. But Ouyang, that's not what I want to tell you. Fan Ting was about to say that the person who really got the exquisite wish was not Hua Xiangrong. Hearing that Ling Yusheng was injured, Ouyang Qing couldn't wait any longer. She jumped on the flying sword and flew to Yaoguang branch as fast as lightning. Ouyang Mingzhu's face was colorful, and she was full of hatred. She didn't expect Ling Yusheng to be so lucky that he hadn't been driven out yet. Why was Hua Xiangrong so useless? She got the exquisite wish, but she didn't allow her to kill those bitches of the Xiaoyaro school. And uncle, what on earth did he do? Ouyang Mingzhu was thinking a lot, but she quickly got on the flying boat, ready to catch up with Ouyang Qing. Humph, she wouldn't give the shameless Ling Yusheng a chance to seduce her brother. Hey, wait a minute, I want to tell you that college chief Wei, Fan Ting wanted to talk to Ouyang Mingzhu, but Ouyang Mingzhu shook off his hand and murmured with a sneer, even if those people from Yaoguang branch shamelessly stay for a while, so what? As long as uncle is here, as long as we have exquisite wish, they will still have to scram. Fan Ting looked at her disappearing silhouette and shook his head, revealing a mocking smile. Ouyang's little sister might look cute on the surface, but she was secretly malicious. It was truly nauseating. He wondered when Ouyang would be able to see his sister's true colors. Ouyang Qing and Ouyang Mingzhu arrived at the Yaoguang branch one after the other. They didn't see Ling Yusheng, but were questioned by Muyan. Where were you when fifth senior brother was injured? When the fifth brother was about to be kicked out of the Yaoguang branch, where were you? Now you're telling me that you want to protect fifth senior brother? Facing Muyang's piercing question, Ouyang Qing's hands are tightly clenched, but he can't answer a single word. Ouyang Yangming explained, Big brother accompanied me back to the Ouyang residence for treatment because I was injured. My brother is worried about me. Miss Jun, what right do you have to question my brother? Muyang frowns, her eyes cold. Chapter 1309. Our Yaoguang branch is a small temple, we can't afford to accommodate you great Buddhas. Xiao Sheng. Ouyang Qing sees the person, but she can't hear what he's saying. She steps forward and grabs his hand. You're hurt? Is it serious? The youngster's face is a bit pale. As soon as Ouyang Qing's spiritual power enters, she notices the internal injuries in Ling Yusheng's body. Last night, they were worried about Mu Yang, so they didn't allow her to treat them. So, Ling Yusheng's injuries haven't healed yet. Ling Yusheng wants to pull his hand back, but Ouyang Qing doesn't let go. She even grabs his wrist, directly transferring her spiritual power to him. You're crazy. Ling Yusheng suddenly pushes her. Why are you transferring your spiritual power to me? Spiritual power is different from spiritual energy. It's the essence of a person's spiritual energy that is constantly cleansed and condensed in the dantian. It's different from spiritual energy that can be restored after consumption, but the loss of spiritual power is irreversible. Generally, there are very few people who would transfer spiritual power to each other. Because the attributes of spiritual power are different, mutual transfer will cause the other party to go berserk. But Ling Yusheng and Ouyang Qing are different, they're childhood sweethearts. Before Ling Yusheng entered the Xiao Yaro school, every bit of spiritual power in his body was cultivated under Ouyang Qing's guidance. They used the same mental cultivation method and mnemonic chants, and practiced the same battle spells. For many years, the two often transfer their spiritual power, as if they're one. But now, why is Ouyang Qing doing this? After experiencing so many things, what's the point of him transferring his spiritual power to her? Ling Yusheng's eyes are red, staring at Ouyang Qing. His eyes are full of sorrow and hatred. Ouyang Qing's hand trembles and she loosens his wrist. Ling Yusheng immediately steps back, keeping a distance from her. Ouyang Qing wants to step forward, but Mu Yang is one step ahead, blocking Ling Yusheng behind her. Her face no longer has the lazy and gossipy look she usually has when she teases Ouyang Qing and Ling Yusheng, only full of coldness. "Brother Ouyang, please don't come looking for our fifth brother anymore." Then she sneers, "Your approach will only bring danger to fifth brother, so please don't appear again." Ouyang Qing is startled. "What do you mean?" "What do I mean? Of course it's the literal meaning." Lung Yu Mo, who had just come out of the house, sneered, "You keep saying that you want to protect Little Five's safety, but when something happened to Little Five, you don't even have a shadow." Ouyang Qing suddenly looked at Ling Yusheng, but Ling Yusheng coldly avoided his gaze. Muyan sneered faintly, "Master Ouyang, don't you know that the person who came to seal the Yaoguang branch yesterday and injured fifth brother was your uncle, Wei Tianming? The people around you have repeatedly made things difficult for fifth senior brother and bullied him. Don't tell me that you don't know anything." When Ouyang Qing heard that, his face suddenly darkened. However, he did not show any surprise. Instead, he clenched his fists tightly. After a long while, he finally raised his head and looked at Ling Yusheng, and his voice became hoarse as if it was being torn apart. "Little Sheng, believe me. I won't leave you again. Even if I die, I'll definitely protect you. Little Sheng, can you trust me one more time?" The man's hoarse and broken voice made Ling Yusheng's heart tremble. Chapter 13:10. Chu Moli played with the jade pendant tassels on his waist and suddenly asked indifferently, "Young Master Ouyang, I'd like to ask, where did you go yesterday?" Ouyang Mingzhu had seen the interaction between Ouyang Qing and Ling Yusheng. When she heard Ling Yusheng say that Ouyang Qing had transferred her spiritual yuan to him, she felt like there were thousands of ants gnawing on her heart. When she heard Chu Moli's question, she immediately said, "Big brother Ling, don't blame big brother. He was worried about me when I went berserk, so he specially accompanied me back to the Ouyang family. When we heard that something had happened to the Alcade branch, we immediately rushed over." As she spoke, she moved closer to Ouyang Qing and threw a provocative look at Ling Yusheng. Chu Moli laughed lightly. "Oh, so it was because Miss Ouyang was injured so you returned to the Ouyang family. But the timing of Miss Ouyang's berserk was really coincidental. It was neither early nor late, just when Principal Wei wanted to seal the Alcade branch." Luo Yu rolled her eyes. "How can there be so many coincidences in this world? Just happened to expose my fifth senior brother's disguise in front of everyone, just happened to let everyone know that fifth senior brother likes men, just happened to assign fifth senior brother to the Alcade branch that doesn't even have a shadow, just happened to be injured when Wei Tianming wanted to seal the Alcade branch, and just happened to have you send her home. Ouyang Qing, do you really think that these are all coincidences?" Following Luo Yu's narration, Ouyang Qing's expression became more and more unsightly. Then, he suddenly looked towards Ouyang Mingzhu. Ouyang Mingzhu shuddered when she saw the killing intent in his eyes. "Mingzhu, I remember telling you before not to try and touch Xiao Sheng. Otherwise, don't blame me for not recognizing you as my sister." Ouyang Mingzhu only felt her entire body stiffen and tremble, her back soaked in cold sweat. Only at this moment did she realize how decisive and cold-blooded Ouyang Qing, who was being raised as the next leader of the Ouyang family, was. She desperately shook her head, her voice trembling. Brother, how can you doubt me? I grew up with Big Brother Ling. When I first met him, I didn't treat him well because I was afraid that he would affect your reputation. Why would I intentionally harm him? Even if it was my uncle, he was only carrying out Linglong's wish. The one who really wanted to harm Big Brother Ling was the Inu Palace. Yes, it was Hua Xiangrong of the Inu Palace. It had nothing to do with me. This time, Ouyang Qing did not show her the gentle and tolerant smile of an elder brother. Instead, he snorted coldly, "You'd better remember what you said, otherwise." Ouyang Qing did not finish her sentence, but it made Ouyang Mingzhu's face turn even paler. Her hands and feet were covered in cold sweat. After the fear, it was replaced by anger and jealousy. Xiao Sheng. Why was Ouyang Yangqing's heart only filled with that bitch, Ling Yusheng? Even his sister's weight couldn't be compared to this slut. Why? Ouyang Mingzhu's fingernails dug into her palms. After a long while, she squeezed out a smile. By the way, Brother Ling, I heard that Linglong of Hua Xiangrong wants to close the Yaoguang branch and expel all of you. Was it true? Did Hua Xiangrong say how long could you stay in the Yaoguang branch? Why don't I plead with my uncle to let you stay in the outer yard? Chapter 13:11. Lung Yumor couldn't help but laugh out loud. Plead with your uncle? Are you joking with me? Which corner of the school do you want to find Wei Tianming for me to see? Ouyang Mingzhu said angrily. What do you mean? Do you know that my uncle is the chairman of the Council of Students? You dare to slander him, aren't you afraid that my uncle will punish you? Ayo, I'm so scared. Lung Yumor laughed coldly. It's a pity that Wei Tianming can't even enter Starry School now. Luo Yu giggled. I forgot to tell you something. Wei Tianming has already been expelled from the Alcade branch by the Linglong Tower's spirit. He can never return. What do you mean? It means that the person who receives the Linglong wish wishes for Wei Tianming to be expelled from Starry School forever. Impossible. Ouyang Mingzhu suddenly screamed. How is this possible? Don't speak nonsense. Isn't the Linglong wish sealed in the Alcade branch forever? How could it be that my uncle was expelled from the academy? Chumoli looked at her meaningfully. So, Miss Ouyang wishes for us and Xiaowu to be expelled. Ouyang Mingzhu's expression froze, turning to the expressionless Ouyang Qing. Tears were already welling up in her eyes. I didn't mean it that way. But why would uncle be expelled? Brother, that's our uncle. They're speaking nonsense, right? Ouyang Qing didn't respond to her at all. Instead, she looked at Mu Yang and the others and asked sincerely, Can you tell me what happened yesterday? Luo Yu twirled an insect-shaped puppet around her fingertip, a cute smile on her delicate face. 2 dimples and little canines could be faintly seen. Wei Tianming pretended to be the Linglong wish to expel us. He even wanted to trap all of us in the 10,000 Wailing Ghosts matrix and kill us. In the end, the real Linglong wish was to expel Wei Tianming from Starry School forever. Don't you think this is called those who do evil will bring about their own destruction? No, I think it should be good and evil will be rewarded. If you don't believe me, look up and see who the heavens spare. Hihi, I wonder who the heavens will spare next. Miss Ouyang, do you think it's you? Ouyang Mingzhu shook her head in horror. No, it's not me, it has nothing to do with me. Uncle was just carrying out his official duties. Didn't you guys say that? That fake exquisite wish was also made by Hua Xiangrong. It has nothing to do with you. As she spoke, she threw herself over and hugged Ouyang Yangqing's hand as she cried, Gidge, please help Uncle. He's being wronged. Uncle is the principal of Aliath branch, how can he be expelled from the academy? Ouyang Yangqing's face, however, did not have the slightest hint of sadness like her. She only said indifferently, This is the result of Linglong's wish. There's nothing I can do. She broke free from Ouyang Mingzhu and walked towards Ling Yusheng. Before Ling Yusheng could retreat, Ouyang Qing quickly grabbed his hand. Ling Yusheng wanted to struggle angrily, but he heard the man's almost pleading voice, Little Sheng, Let me see if you've been hurt by the 10,000 crying ghosts array. Let me confirm that you're still fine and didn't disappear like before. Chapter 13:12. He was stunned and forgot to struggle. Then, Ouyang Qing pulled him into her arms and hugged him tightly. That tight yet careful hug was as if he was hugging a rare treasure. Ling Yusheng's heart ached. Ouyang Qing, what are you doing? Now that things had come to this, what was the point of acting like this? The man who had looked at him with disgust, the man who had told him to get lost, could it be that he would disappear into thin air? Little Sheng, I will definitely give you an explanation for what happened back then. Trust me one more time, just one more time. Without waiting for Ling Yusheng to react, she let go of him. He quickly walked in front of the dazed Ouyang Mingzhu and took out his flying sword. Why are you still in a daze? Aren't you going back? Hearing Ouyang Qing talking to her, Ouyang Mingzhu suddenly came back to her senses, her face revealing a terrified and surprised smile. Okay, brother, let's go. Let's go. Sitting on the flying sword, Ouyang Mingzhu looked back at the Yaoguang branch and smiled proudly. Ling Yusheng, so what if you complain again? After all, I am Ouyang Qing's younger sister. Why would he do anything to me? However, this time, he actually failed to drive Ling Yusheng away. Instead, his uncle was killed. How could this be? No, she must think of a way to make that slut, Ling Yusheng, die without a burial ground. In the Alcade branch, Ling Yusheng gently touched his neck, but he only felt something wet. He was stunned. When Ouyang Qing hugged him just now, she buried her face in his neck. Could this be Ouyang Qing's tears? Why would Ouyang Qing cry? After healing the injuries of her fellow apprentices, Muyan started to cultivate with all her might. She wanted to climb to the top of the exquisite list. The Linglong Pagoda was so tall that it pierced through the clouds. No one knew how many floors it had. But so far, only a handful of people had managed to reach the 10th floor of the Linglong Pagoda. Mu Yang had passed through the 10th floor, but stopped at the 11th floor. Ouyang Qing and Lu Jinhang were on the 12th and 13th floors respectively. These days, Muyan has thought of all kinds of methods, even using her Shun musician skills to challenge the vicious beasts of the 11th floor. But none of them succeeded. This made Mu Yang a little discouraged. Since obtaining the Shun musician skills, she has rarely encountered any troublesome problems in her cultivation. But this obstacle made her feel helpless. Could it be that only by breaking through the gold core stage could he break through the 11th level? After all, Ouyang Qing and Lu Jinhang were both Jindan. However, the problem was that her cultivation method was different from others. All of her advancements were perfect breakthroughs. If he wanted to reach the golden core stage, he had to at least get the perfect golden core cultivation manual. But the problem was that she couldn't find it at all after searching through all the books in the space. When he asked Chocho, she also said that she had forgotten where the books were. After another failure, Mu Yang comes out of the Linglong Pagoda. She is about to board the flying boat and return to the Alcade branch. However, he saw the Academy's public lecture notice at the place where the flying boat was rented. On it was written, X month, X day, X hour, Yuheng Branch Academy will hold a basic alchemy course, instructor, Wu Yong. Seeing this message, Mu Yang's eyes brighten. She had wanted to learn alchemy for a long time. During the freshman's recuperation period, the Starry School had opened many courses, but none of them had anything to do with alchemy. Now, she finally had an opportunity. Chapter 13:13. The next day. Mu Yang arrived at Yuheng School's Spring Light Hall on time. As soon as she appeared, she attracted everyone's attention. Mu Yang turned around and looked at the group of people following behind her. She said helplessly, I'm just here to learn alchemy. I'll be fine. Why did you follow me? There were many public courses in Starry School. Attending could even increase school points. School points could be exchanged for treasures, pills, and the opportunity to read some precious books in the school of the Emperor Star. Therefore, most students in Starry School would choose to learn some public courses. However, Mu Yang's seniors and juniors were not interested in these public courses. In addition to being tortured by little martial uncle, His favorite thing was to sneak out to play. Not to mention, it was the most boring alchemy course. Apart from Mu Yang, no one from the Xiaoyaro school was interested in the auxiliary type. To them, making pills, crafting weapons, and drawing talismans, they would rather work for Yi Futian's sword array. Leng Yumor waved her hand and said righteously, "We're here because we're interested in alchemy." Mu Yang almost rolled her eyes. Fourth senior sister, you being interested in alchemy is even stranger than fifth senior brother going out without makeup. Although Ling Yusheng no longer disguised himself as a woman, he cared deeply about his appearance. Therefore, every time he went out, he would dress up properly. His clothes and makeup were much more exquisite than Mu Yang and Leng Yumor's. Hearing Mu Yang's words, the people from the Xiaoyaro school could not help but laugh. Ling Yusheng did not feel offended at all. Instead, he laughed like a noble and arrogant young master. After laughing enough, Yun Ruohan could not help but ask, "Junior sister, do you know alchemy?" Mu Yang shook her head. No. At least, she did not know how to make pills on the cultivation continent. In fact, the elixirs that were previously refined in the Yenwu continent can't be considered as real elixirs. I told you that junior sister doesn't know. Junior sister already knows so many things. Drawing talismans, being a musician, healing, fighting, and if she knows alchemy, how are we going to live? They chatted and laughed as they walked in. Many people secretly looked at them, their eyes filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred. Now, the people from the Alcade branch were all famous. The 7 of them monopolized the 2 top-notch instructors that everyone envied. With just the strength of 6 people, they dared to contend against the academy supervisor and the Dean Wei Tianming. By the way, speaking of Dean Wei, have you guys heard? Dean Wei is dead. What? Wasn't College Dean Wei expelled from the Starry School by the artifact spirit of the Linglong Pagoda? How could he die? He is a Yuanying Xiuzhe. It's absolutely true. A few days ago, I saw Ouyang Mingzhu cry so much that she almost fainted. Fortunately, senior brother Ouyang was present. The next day, senior brother Ouyang sent Ouyang Mingzhu back to the Wei clan. Senior brother Ouyang is such a good brother. It was said that in order to mourn and take care of Ouyang Mingzhu, they had even given up the opportunity to go to Dragon Soaring Academy as an exchange student. I really envy Ouyang Mingzhu for having such a good brother. Not only is he handsome and powerful, but he also dotes on his sister so much. Ling Yusheng heard the discussions of the people around him. Mu Yang and the others couldn't help but look at him. Chapter 13-14. Ouyang family's matters have nothing to do with me. Where they are, what they are doing, whether they are brothers and sisters, or loving each other, I'm not interested. Mu Yang frowned slightly. Ling Yusheng's face doesn't show any abnormality, and his words are also very free and easy. But she feels that there is a flash of pain and self-mockery in fifth brother's eyes. She is about to speak, when a woman's voice suddenly comes to her ears. Hey, Jun Mu Yang, there's still Yaoguang branch, there are seats here. Mu Yang follows the voice and sees the person who called her. She can't help but raise her eyebrows. Jiang Xinyu? The person who called her is Jiang Xinyu, the intrepid girl of Breaking Mountain School who confessed to youngest martial uncle in Mirror Moon Mountain Range, and later to Yi Liangchen in the outer sect. Meeting her eyes, Jiang Xinyu blushes and raises her voice. This is the best seat, do you want to come and sit? Mu Yang looks around and finds that there are only a few seats left in the entire Spring Sunshine Hall. So, she walks towards Jiang Xinyu. When she gets closer, she finds that there are 2 acquaintances standing next to Jiang Xinyu. Senior sister Xinyu, I obviously saw this seat first. It's fine if you take it away, but why do you want to occupy so much? I don't even have a place to sit. The woman who speaks is like a weeping beauty, delicate and pitiful. Her whole person exudes the aura of a little white flower that has been bullied. Who else could it be but Liu Ruoxuan, who Mu Yang hates the most? What makes Mu Yang even more depressed and angry is that the scars that she made on Liu Ruoxuan's face during the freshman assessment have disappeared. She once again has that delicate face that can deceive men. Mu Yang can't help but roll her eyes. This Liu Ruoxuan's luck is too good. It's just like the female lead's fate mentioned in Bailey Lewin's notes. Female lead's fate. Hair. Mu Yang shows a faint sneer. Sure enough, as soon as Liu Ruoxuan says this, her tears fall, and the surrounding male cultivators immediately show sympathetic expressions. They are also dissatisfied with Jiang Xinyu. But Jiang Xinyu didn't care at all. She pushed Liu Ruoxuan away and sneered, "I don't care if you like it or not. Anyway, this row of unknown spots is reserved by me. First come, first served, do you understand? This young lady will give it to whoever she likes. Get lost." Standing beside Liu Ruoxuan, Jiang Hofei couldn't help but fly into a rage. Jiang Xinyu, what kind of attitude is this? How could he talk to Shonga like that? Why don't you move aside and let me and Shonga sit inside? Jiang Xinyu doesn't pay any attention to him, and directly calls out to Muyan, "Jun Muyan, come in, the most central seat is for you." Jiang Xinyu used to hate Mu Yang, but now, she doesn't know why, but the more she looks at her, the more she likes her. Moreover, after looking at that stunning face for a long time, it always made her dizzy, as if her soul had been hooked. Mu Yang faintly smiled and directly squeezed through Liu Ruoxuan and Jiang Hofei, walking towards the place that Jiang Xinyu had reserved for them. Liu Ruoxuan staggers from being squeezed. At the same time, she also sees Muyan, and her charming face immediately distorts. Her voice rises by several degrees. "Jun Muyan, what are you doing?" Mu Yang turns around and looks at her with a smile that isn't a smile. "Nothing." "You, why did you push me just now?" Muyan's smile becomes more leisurely and charming. "That was to tell you that a good dog doesn't block the way." Chapter 13-15. Jiang Xinyu slaps the table and laughs. "Liu Ruoxuan, I said you're a dog. Why don't you get lost? What if the tutor comes and blocks our view?" Liu Ruoxuan's whole body trembles with anger. Every time she meets Muyan, she becomes very, very unhappy, and her face will be trampled underfoot. But this time, she learns from her mistakes. She takes a deep breath and doesn't fight back. Instead, she walks to the remaining seats next to Jiang Xinyu. Although it's a bit on the edge, it's still in the first row, the closest to the tutor's podium. Who would have thought that as soon as Liu Ruoxuan walks over, Jiang Xinyu will whip her? "Who said that you can sit in this seat?" Liu Ruoxuan widens her eyes in disbelief, and her lips tremble in anger. "Jiang Xinyu, don't go too far." Jiang Xinyu snorts coldly and is about to reply, but she suddenly sees a figure coming in from the door. She immediately beckons and shouts, "Fatty Zheng, here." Soon, she sees a group of people swaggering over. The one leading them is the little fatty that Muyan had taught a lesson to in the outer courtyard. Muyan thinks for a long time, and vaguely remembers that he seems to be called Zhang Jiabao. After not seeing him for a while, Fatty Zhang has become a little rounder, but his complexion is a lot more rotund than before. The tips of his brows and the corners of his eyes are in high spirits. As soon as she sees the person, Liu Ruoxuan's eyes immediately flash with joy. The expression on her face is even more weak and pitiful. "Zheng Gij, long time no see. It's so good to see you again." She smiles as she speaks, but tears fall from her eyes. She looks like a stubborn girl who is being bullied, but is enduring the grievances and not wanting to be found out. When Fatty Zheng sees Liu Ruoxuan and his tears, half of his heart melts. He is about to greet them with "good brother, little sister." Suddenly, he catches a glimpse of the cold and furious Jiang Xinyu from the corner of his eye. As soon as he sees Jiang Xinyu, he remembers that cruel teenager, Yi Liangchen. Thinking of Yi Liangchen, Fatty Zheng's complexion suddenly changes. He pushes away Liu Ruoxuan's hand that reaches to grab him, and viciously says, "Who are you? Who's your brother? Just looking at a pretentious woman like you makes me feel disgusted. Get away from me, don't even think about getting involved with me." Liu Ruoxuan staggered from the throw. There were still tears on her face, but there was no way for her to cry anymore. She looked at Zheng Little Fatty in disbelief, thinking that she had mistaken him for someone else. "Brother Zheng, what's wrong? I'm Ruoxuan, your little sister Xian. Don't you remember me?" Zheng Little Fatty hesitated for a moment. Just when Liu Ruoxuan thought that he was in love with her and wanted to grab his hand, Liu Ruoxuan stopped him. Little fatty Zheng suddenly flung her hand away and said in disgust, "Don't touch me. I've already thought it through. Since you're the woman my big brother hates the most, then you're definitely not a good person. In the future, you'll also be the woman I, Zheng Jiabao, hate the most. I'm warning you, you'd better stay away from me, or don't blame me for beating you up every time I see you." Liu Ruoxuan had never imagined that Zheng Little Fatty would be so heartless towards her. The onlookers couldn't help but ask, "Young Master Zheng, who is your boss? Junior sister Liu is so kind and weak. Why does your boss hate her?" Zheng Little Fatty puts his hands on his hips and shows an incomparably proud smile. My boss's name is Taboo. Don't scare you. Chapter 13:16. His name is Yi Liang Chen. Everyone was quiet for a moment after he said that. Then there was an even louder discussion. "Fatty Zheng, what are you bragging about? You haven't seen God Yi's identity until now, how could he be your boss?" "That's right. If you're lying, you should find someone more credible." Fatty Zheng was anxious and pulled Jiang Xinyu over. "Ask her if you don't believe me. Xinyu and I saw Boss Yi together that day. Moreover, Boss Yi even cured his impotence." Of course, he would never say that out loud. Jiang Xinyu's cheeks were red and her eyes were full of shyness. But under everyone's questioning, she still raised her chin and said, "Of course I've seen Gongzi Yi. He is as steady as jade and as elegant as an immortal. He is the one and only man in the world." "That's not right. I've also seen God Yi outside the Linglong Tower on the day of his registration, but his appearance is obviously ordinary. I've also seen God Yi, but he was wearing a mask. Only half of his face was exposed, so he should be a handsome man." The people around them started to quarrel. Everyone was arguing that the Yi Liang Chen they saw was the real person. The 6 people of the Xiaoyaro sect who were watching this scene were trying to hold back their laughter. They peeked at Muyan from time to time. If this group of people knew that the God Yi they were talking about was their junior sister, who knows how they would feel? Everyone was excited, except for one person. That person was Liu Ruoxuan. When the name Yi Liang Chen appeared on the Linglong list for the first time, she had a bad premonition. Could this Yi Liang Chen be the Yi Liang Chen who made her lose face in Tianguang ruins and fell into a miserable hell? But the Yi Liang Chen in Tianguang ruins was clearly a woman. But then she remembered that Tianguang ruins could change gender and appearance. Liu Ruoxuan's heart was in her throat. How could there be such a coincidence in the world? And now, Fatty Zheng's words also confirmed her guess. Fatty Zheng slapped the table with a face full of vigor. "Who is Boss Yi? He is an immortal who is more powerful than senior brother Ouyang. What's so strange about having 1,000 faces? But there is one thing that I must convey on behalf of Boss Yi." Zheng Little Fatty pointed at Liu Ruoxuan and said loudly, "Boss Yi said that the woman he hates the most is Liu Ruoxuan. Whoever walks close to Liu Ruoxuan is going against Boss Yi. Did you hear me clearly?" Liu Ruoxuan's body was on the verge of collapsing. She was so angry that she almost fainted. However, when the people around her heard this, they really distanced themselves from her and pointed at her. Even the male cultivator who had been pitying her just a moment ago now revealed a look of dread and disgust. Why? Why did Yap Liang Chen have to step on her again and again? What did she do wrong? Liu Ruoxuan's tears of anger and grievance flowed down. Jiang Hofei's heart ached when he saw this, but he didn't dare to go against so many people. He could only help her to sit in the back. Not long after, Instructor Wu Yong came in and the public lecture began. Mu Yang listens to Wu Yong's explanation, but her interest wanes. This was because the people who attended public classes usually did not have any foundation in alchemy. Therefore, the course that Wu Yong taught was actually only about refining first and second grade medicinal pills. As for elixirs below the 3rd rank, Mu Yan has long been able to refine them. Chapter 13:17. The 6 people from the Xiaoyaro sect are exactly the same as her. They are not interested in alchemy at all, and they don't understand at all. However, the 7 of them are sitting in the first row, which attracts Wu Yong's attention from time to time. Such a lazy attitude makes Wu Yong's face turn ugly. Even his voice deepens. It seems that a lot of people think that they are so powerful that they don't need to listen to the explanation to be able to refine dance. Since that's the case, let's start distributing the ingredients. Everyone can try to refine dance. As Wu Yong speaks, he looks at the 7 people from the Xiaoyaro sect. After the class, everyone has to hand over a pill of fasting. If you can't do it, then stay in the alchemy room tonight and don't need to go back. Suddenly, there are ghostly wails and wolf howls. The noise was so loud that it woke up the 7 people from the Xiaoyaro sect. What happened? Class is over. Luo Yu wipes the saliva from the corner of her mouth and asks in confusion, 6th senior sister, let's go back. Alchemy is not fun at all. Hearing this, Wu Yong's gaze becomes even more unfriendly. Jiang Xinyu glares at them in disappointment. Go back? Why would you go back? I don't think you can go back today. Luo Yu blinks in confusion. The soft hair on the top of her head stands up like a cat that has just woken up. She is indescribably cute. However, this confusion and cuteness only lasts for a few breaths before it turns into a scream of horror. What? Refine pills of fasting before class ends? How is that possible? Eldest senior brother, do you know how to refine dance? Yun Ruohan bitterly shakes his head. He had just fallen asleep. Lung Yumo's face is even more lifeless. If I eat these elixirs in the middle of the class, will the tutor let us go? Mu Yang yawns and casually gives them the ingredients. It's okay, it's just pills of fasting. I'll refine them for you. Junior sister, don't joke around. Alchemy is not a joke, anyone can refine it, right? That's right. Furthermore, I heard that it takes at least 2 hours to refine a fasting pill. There's only 3.5 hours left until the end of class. Even if you really know how to refine pills, you'll at most be able to refine your own pills. How could you possibly refine all 7 of us? Little junior sister, if you really know how to refine pills, then finish your own first. Listening to the persuasion of her fellow apprentices, Mu Yang was still neither too fast nor too slow, picking and choosing the elixirs in front of her. The other people in the Spring Sunshine Hall were already nervously refining. Yun Ruohan and the others see that Mu Yang hasn't started refining for a long time, so they guess that she doesn't know how to refine pills at all, but they also feel relieved. At most, he would be grounded for a night. They could even survive a night of little martial uncle's sword array, so what was the point of the alchemy room? An hour later. In the Spring Sunshine Hall, a delicate and gentle female voice suddenly rang out, Instructor Wu, I've finished refining the pill. In an instant, everyone's attention was focused on the last row. Liu Ruoxuan stood up with a faint smile on her lotus-like face. She also conveniently glanced at Mu Yang. Wu Yong arrives in front of Liu Ruoxuan, opens her furnace, and sees the 2 pills that are still emitting steam. Chapter 13:18. Liu Ruoxuan said modestly, Teacher, you flatter me. It's because you taught me well. I just followed your instructions. Wu Yong patted her shoulder and asked her to sit down. Then he pointed out, some people don't know how to listen and learn. But some people don't know anything, but they don't even have the attitude to ask for advice. My school doesn't welcome people like that. Wu Yong walked to Mu Yang and the others. He looked disgusted and cold. These words were obviously referring to them. Liu Ruoxuan also came forward at this time, stood beside Mu Yang, and softly said, Mu Yang, do you not know alchemy? Why don't I teach you? It's easy to learn. You'll teach me. Mu Yang raised the corner of her mouth, smiling lazily and mockingly. You think you're worthy? Who allowed you to call me Mu Yang? Do I know you? Please get out of my way. Then she opened the furnace and threw all the elixirs of the 7 people into it. Liu Ruoxuan was choked by Mu Yang's rude words. But when she saw Mu Yang's action, a disdainful smile flashed across her eyes. But on the surface, she said anxiously, how can you put all the elixirs into the furnace at the same time? The furnace will explode because the spiritual power is too heterogeneous. Mu Yang, don't do this kind of stupid thing just because you hate me, okay? If the furnace explodes, The people around you will be hurt. As soon as Liu Ruoxuan said this, the surrounding people retreated in fear. Wu Yong shook his head and sneered, "You want to refine 7 elixirs in one furnace? You're overestimating yourself." Jiang Hofei quickly dragged Liu Ruoxuan to the side. "Ruoxuan, they treated you like that just now, and you still want to teach them. You're too kind." Liu Ruoxuan teared up, "But I don't want to see them hurt because of the furnace explosion." The people around her, who hated Liu Ruoxuan because of Yi Liangchen, couldn't help but have a good impression of her after seeing her act. There were even more people pointing at Mu Yang. Is Jun Mu Yang crazy? She put all 7 elixirs into the furnace at the same time. Hihi, it's obvious that she doesn't know how to refine elixirs. Just as everyone was discussing animatedly, a burst of fragrant aroma suddenly floated out from Mu Yang's pill furnace. What is this smell? How fragrant. My stomach is growling. So fragrant. It's the smell of a fasting pill, but I've never smelled a fasting pill like this. Why do I seem to smell the fragrant roasted goose? Even Wu Yong, who was ridiculing Mu Yang with disdain, couldn't help but turn his head and walk towards Mu Yang in astonishment. What did you refine? Mu Yang raises her head and meets Wu Yong's shocked eyes. She faintly smiles and says, "Fasting pill, isn't that what you taught him, Tutor Wu?" What kind of joke was this? Since when did the fasting pill that he had taught to refine emit such an aroma? As time passed, the aroma of the fasting pill became stronger and more alluring. Outside the window, there were even many birds flying down and circling the spring radiance hall, chirping non-stop. There were even a few that greedily wanted to fly towards Mu Yang's furnace, but they were sent flying by Lung Yumo's blade. The entire spring sunshine hall was filled with the sound of students swallowing their saliva. Chapter 13-19. The lid of the furnace flies out, falling to the ground. And almost at this moment, all the fragrance also disappears without a trace. Did the alchemy fail? It must have failed, right? So many elixirs were thrown in at the same time, how could it succeed? Didn't you see the lid explode? But if it failed, what was that fragrance just now? Everyone hurriedly moves closer. The fastest is still Wu Yong. His figure flashes, and is already in front of the furnace. When he sees the scene inside the furnace, his eyes suddenly widen, almost not daring to believe what he's seeing. He reaches out his hand, and slowly pinches out an elixir from inside. This elixir has a lustrous luster, faintly suffused with a sparkling and translucent feeling. Compared to the one that Liu Ruoxuan had just refined, it's clearly not just 1 grade higher. A 3rd grade fasting pill, how is this possible? Wu Yong's voice trembles. The Dan that I taught can only refine 2nd grade fasting pills at most, how can you refine 3rd grade? As soon as these words come out, the entire spring sunshine hall explodes again. Zheng Little Fatty is the first to rush over, wanting to see the legendary 3rd grade fasting pill. Because fasting pills are generally only used by people who train their body and abstain from eating, the ones circulating in the market are generally 1st grade and 2nd grade elixirs. 3rd grade elixirs can't be bought even with Jingsha. Zheng Little Fatty occasionally participates in experimental learning, but the time is long, the place is remote, and he eats a lot. Eating too many ordinary fasting pills can easily accumulate pill poison, and fresh food can't be stored in a Chenkuan bag for a long time. But if there's a 3rd grade fasting pill, it's different. He once used a 3rd grade fasting pill, and after taking it, he didn't feel hungry for a whole 7 days. Zheng Little Fatty pounces over, wanting to snatch the fasting pill from Wu Yong's hand. But when he inadvertently looks down, he sees the furnace that Mu Yan just used to refine elixirs. He can't help but shout, "Damn, how can there be so many fasting pills?" He sees that there are more than 10 elixirs in the open furnace. Each one is exactly the same as the one in Wu Yong's hand. All of them are 3rd grade fasting pills. In just a short half an hour, Mu Yan actually refined 10 3rd grade fasting pills in one go. Was this really not a joke? Wu Yong abruptly looks at Mu Yan. This time, there's no longer any disgust in his eyes, only enthusiasm and amazement. Genius, genius. I actually managed to wait for an alchemy genius. Aya, how could a genius like you go to a place like the Alcade Institution? You should come to our Aliath branch. I guarantee that in at most 10 years, I will definitely let you become a 7th-ranked pill master. What a pity, what a pity. The academy did not allow students to transfer to another academy. It's such a pity that such a good seedling is left outside. Wu Yong could not help but sigh, then he could not help but grab Mu Yang's shoulder and asked anxiously, "You, what did you say your name was just now?" Jun. Jun Muyan, isn't it? I saw that your alchemy technique was too crude and without any technique. What a waste of God's gift, what a waste of God's gift. How about this, are you willing to learn alchemy under my tutelage? Although I can't take you as my disciple, I can still bring you through the doors of an alchemist. As he spoke, Wu Yong completely forgot that he had just been slapped in the face. He was filled with passion for alchemy and cherished talents. Chapter 1320. Wu Yong's eyes lit up. You're interested in alchemy too? Of course. Mu Yang smiled. If I wasn't interested, I wouldn't have come to the public class. I just want to learn about alchemy of the 3rd level and above. Yes, of course. With your talent, what's the point of making 1st or 2nd level alchemy? Isn't that like killing a chicken with a butcher's knife? Wu Yong was so excited that his eyes turned red, and he spun around in circles. Just you wait, I'll go organize and teach you the pill recipes, spirit medicines, furnace. Right, I'll also prepare a furnace for you. With that, he actually ignored the fact that it was still class time. He waved his hand and told everyone not to hand in any more pills of fasting and left in a hurry. As soon as Wu Yong left, everyone gathered around. Witnessing the dozens of 3rd-level pills of fasting in the furnace, everyone was in awe of Mu Yang. Fatty Zheng said directly, "Jun Mu Yang, Master Jun, can you sell all of these pills of fasting to me? I'm willing to pay 1,000 low-quality crystals for one." This kind of 3rd-level alchemy, even the trash that Mu Yang casually made had such quality. Therefore, she only took out 6 pills and gave them to the disciples of the Xiaoyaro school. The rest were sold to Fatty Zheng. The 7 portions of spiritual medicine used to make the pills of fasting were worth a few dozen low-quality crystals at most. But in the blink of an eye, they were sold for tens of thousands of crystals. This scene ignited the atmosphere in the spring sunshine hall again. Oh my god, I heard that Jun Muyan's musician support was so powerful that it allowed the Xiaoyaro school to defeat Qiming, the Golden Elixir Realm tutor. Now that she also has such great talent in alchemy, wouldn't she be the top support in Starry School? Haha, I didn't think that the #1 support this year would not be from the Aliath branch, but the Alcade branch. Just now when Liu Ruoxuan made 2 pills, I thought she was amazing. But compared to Jun Mu Yang, the difference is like heaven and earth. The whispers and mockery of the surrounding people entered Liu Ruoxuan's ears, causing her face to turn green and white. The poisonous snake named jealousy was entrenched in her heart more and more. She almost went crazy with hatred. Jun Mu Yang, Jun Mu Yang, Jun Mu Yang again. Why was it that every time she was around, she would end up in such a miserable state? Liu Ruoxuan had always felt that she was lucky. But every time she meets Jun Muyan, her good luck would turn into bad luck. Embarrassed, Liu Ruoxuan covered her face with her sleeves and wanted to leave. Unfortunately, Jiang Xinyu did not let her go. She suddenly stretched her leg forward and tripped Liu Ruoxuan. Liu Ruoxuan was caught off guard and fell to the ground. Her lips were purple and her nose was bleeding. She was in an indescribable state. Jiang Xinyu looked down from above and laughed. "Liu Ruoxuan, what did you just say? I remember that you said that you wanted to teach Muyan alchemy. Why are you running now? Shouldn't you be teaching us how to concoct pills?" Jiang Hofei hurriedly rushed over to help Liu Ruoxuan up. He stared at Jiang Xinyu in disapproval. "Xinyu, don't go overboard. Sana, ignore her, let's go." Liu Ruoxuan stood up along with Jiang Hofei, her eyes brimming with tears. Her entire body emitted a sorrowful aura. However, when she looked down, her eyes revealed a cold murderous intent. This murderous intent isn't directed at Muyan, but at Jiang Xinyu. It hurts, it hurts. I can't stand the pain. When the youth grabbed her hand, it was as if he had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. Her fingernails dug into her flesh, causing her to bleed. But Mu Yang doesn't seem to feel the pain at all. Her breathing quickened and her heart burned with anxiety, but she forced herself to calm down. Chi Huang, tell me, how can I help you? She tried to channel her spiritual energy into Chi Huang. And these days, the dark yin holy flame that should have been extinguished had actually begun to reignite. The people of the nether domain were going crazy with joy. The sounds of people singing and dancing, laughing and talking could be heard everywhere. Even the lord of the netherworld domain had an excited smile on his face. They were all waiting for that moment. With the dark yin sacred flame truly ignited, their strength returned to its peak. At that time, they would have the ability to contend with the polar domain for hegemony under the heavens and the ability to ascend to the throne. However, when everyone in the nether realm was celebrating, but no one heard the heart-wrenching cries in the river of forgetfulness, as well as the pain-filled moans that were being suppressed. Chapter 1323. Kai Wen flew high up in the sky and looked down at the young man who was immersed in the river of forgetfulness. She begged again and again, "Master, please come out of the river of forgetfulness. You will die if you continue like this." However, the person in the river of forgetfulness did not seem to hear her at all. Kai Wen desperately wanted to rush down, but when she got close to the river of forgetfulness, a soul-tearing pain came over it, causing it to shriek and retreat in a sorry state. Kai Wen turned and rushed to the entrance of the river of forgetfulness. The entrance of the river of forgetfulness was two towering gates of yellow springs. Kai Wen rushed to the guards of the gates of yellow springs, and her body suddenly enlarged. "Hurry up and open the gates of yellow springs. Master can't hold on any longer." However, the two guards replied indifferently, "The domain master has ordered that before young master advances, we must not open the gates of yellow springs." Hearing this reply, Kai Wen was about to go crazy. "Don't you know that young master was born from the river of forgetfulness, and grew up immersed in thousands of spirits? Every time he advances, it is like peeling off his skin and pulling out his bones, burning his heart and soul. How much suffering did he go through to reach his current cultivation? Do you understand?" Kai Wen enunciated each and every word as she recalled the past in her mind. Her vision blurred uncontrollably. Domain Lord. Domain Lord clearly knows how difficult it is for Master to advance further, how difficult it is to ascend to the heavens, how difficult it is to descend to the King of Hell. Master is also his son. How could he do this to Master? "Open the gates of yellow springs, I will go find the domain master, I will plead with him." However, the two guards remained indifferent and did not seem to be moved at all. Kai Wen used her huge dragon body to hit the gates of yellow springs, but the gates did not budge at all. Her body was covered in wounds and blood, but she did not feel anything. Because her heart was filled with grief, pain, and unwillingness, she almost forgot the pain on her body. Just as Kai Wen was in despair, she suddenly heard the faint sound of a zither. Almost at the same time, the dark yin holy flame that was slowly extinguishing by the river of forgetfulness showed signs of reigniting. Kai Wen was stunned. Zither sound? Why would there be zither sound in the river of forgetfulness? Was she hallucinating? Low, uncontrollable moans of pain came from the river of forgetfulness. "Master." Kai Wen suddenly turned around and flew back to the river of forgetfulness. It ignored the corrosion of the river of forgetfulness and desperately circled downwards. Master, how are you?" Suddenly, the hoarse and weak voice of the young man came from below, the sound of a zither. "Is there, the sound of a zither?" Kai Wen was stunned. "Master, you also heard the zither? Was that my imagination?" Why do I feel like this zither sound was played by my Yang Yang? No, I'm really crazy. My Yang Yang is still in the cultivation continent. How could her zither music appear here? In the river of forgetfulness. The young man in thin clothes slowly raised his head, revealing a face that was as pale as snow but could captivate all living things in the world. The corners of Chings's cracked lips curled up slightly, revealing a warm, hopeful, and humble smile. He slowly reached out his hand that was submerged in the river of forgetfulness. He was as thin as a match, shriveled and cracked, and one could faintly see the bones beneath his skin. Chapter 1324. Perhaps. I also have something that I want to grasp. 3 days later. The light of the Nether Yin sacred flame soared into the sky, lighting up half the sky. The entire cultivation continent was shaken. The Nether Yin holy flame was reignited. That also meant that there might be a real Nether Saint Emperor in the Nether world. Polar domain. Is the Netherworld Saint Emperor really that powerful? Han Yi asks curiously. Elder Chang stroked his beard and sighed. Looking at the current situation in the cultivation continent, the southern Hades, the North Pole region, and the demon race at the bottom of the hidden abyss, Han Yi couldn't help but sneer. It said that it's a tripartite alliance, but even if the Netherworld realm and the demons join forces, they still wouldn't be a match for our polar domain. Yeah. Right now, my polar domain is the overlord, and that's because our polar domain has Juanshang. Elder Chang said, it was Lord who used his indisputable strength to crush the entire continent, allowing our polar domain to become the supreme ruler of the Shoshian continent. But do you know that a long, long time ago, when the Nether Yin sacred flame was burning and the Nether Saint Emperor was in control of power, the Nether region was the power that stood at the peak of the three realms. Han Yi and Ying Mai look at each other, their expressions somewhat incredulous. Is the Nether Yin sacred flame really that powerful? Elder Chang shook his head. It's not the Underworld Yin sacred flame that's powerful, but the Netherworld sacred spirit's inheritance that the Underworld Yin sacred flame brought with it. Supposedly, so long as one obtains the inheritance of the Netherworld divine spirit, one's cultivation speed would advance by leaps and bounds. Moreover, one would be able to touch the secrets of the primordial Grand Tao in a short period of time. Coming into contact with the secrets of the primordial Grand Tao represented that one could transcend the mortal world and truly ascend to immortality. It would be a piece of cake for him to dominate the Shoshian continent. Han Yi also can't help but become anxious. Then in the Netherworld realm, who ignited the Dark Yin holy flame this time? Will he become Jun Shong's opponent? As he's speaking, the palace doors open, and Di Mingju's figure slowly walks out from inside. Greetings, Lord. The few of them hurriedly knelt down and paid their respects. Jun Shong, what's the situation in the Nether realm? Han Yi couldn't help but ask. They all knew that Jun Shong was in the soaring sky main hall to discuss matters with the various hall masters of the polar domain. The main reason was the reigniting of the Dark Yin sacred flame. Di Mingju says faintly, someone advanced in the river of forgetfulness and triggered the Dark Yin sacred flame to reignite. Advancing in the river of forgetfulness? Is that person crazy? Han Yi sucks in a mouthful of cold air. Jun Shong, do you know who is so valiant that they could actually endure the river of forgetfulness's water burning their heart and corroding their bones, flaying their skin and refining their soul, and even advance in it? Di Mingju slightly narrows his eyes, not answering for a long time. After a long while, he said slowly, according to the news from the Netherrealm, it was Yin Yuanyi who obtained the inheritance of the Holy Spirit. Yin Yuanyi? Wasn't that the only son of the current domain lord of the Nether region? He is the future Holy Emperor of the Netherworld. Elder Chang can't help but look at Di Mingju. Jun Shong, is there a problem? Di Mingju slowly twirls his wine cup, then says, Yin Yuanyi, Ben Jun once met him. Unless I'm wrong, with his talent, there's no way he can survive the corrosion of the river of forgetfulness, let alone activate the Dark Yin holy flame. Elder Chang and Han Yi stare blankly. Jun Shong, you mean, this news is false? Then who was it that triggered the Dark Yin holy flame? Di Mingju slowly lowers his eyes, and puts the wine cup in his hand on the table. Chapter 1325. 7 days. Di Mingju said in a low voice, I will stay in the Shoshen continent for another 7 days. If I can't find out the true master of the Dark Yin Holy Flame after 7 days, seal the border of the Netherworld domain. Yes. Netherworld domain. The gate of Underworld slowly opened. Inside the gate was a dark and gloomy hell. Outside the gate was a flourishing joy. And a young man in a thin white undershirt slowly walked from the darkness into the light, from the dead silence into the bustling. The guards standing on both sides of the gate of Underworld stared at the young man's perfect side profile. What surged in their hearts was not amazement or admiration, but an inexplicable, bone-deep fear. Little Xiao, you finally succeeded in your promotion. A gentle woman's voice came from not far away. The guards on both sides immediately felt that the cold and gloomy aura disappeared without a trace. Although there was no smile on the face of the young man who passed through the gate of Underworld, there was a trace of warmth in his eyes. The gate of Underworld slowly closed behind him. Luo Yunxiao only glanced back, then quickly walked to a woman dressed in luxurious clothes not far away and bowed. Mother. The woman looked at him kindly, her eyes full of tenderness. Little Xiao, you've suffered a lot in this promotion. Luo Yunxiao's eyes were soft, and there was a faint childish look in his eyes. However, before he could speak, he saw a tall and dignified man descend from the sky. As soon as this man appeared, the guards of the gate of Underworld and the attendants of the luxurious woman immediately knelt on the ground. Greetings, Lord. Luo Yunxiao also slowly knelt down. Greetings, Father. The person who came was the Lord of the Netherworld domain, Yin Wuji. And this luxurious woman was the wife of the Lord of the Netherworld domain, and also the Queen of the Netherworld domain, Fu Yushu. Luo Yunxiao called these two people father and mother. But his surname was not Yin. Yin Wuji glanced at Luo Yunxiao coldly and suddenly raised his hand. Luo Yunxiao felt that the scene had changed, and she was already in Yin Wuji's bedroom. In the whole room, besides Luo Yunxiao, there was only Fu Yushu. Take off your clothes and let me see your back. Yin Wuji coldly ordered. Luo Yunxiao didn't resist. She unbuttoned her clothes and turned around. The young man's back was tall, slender, and white like jade. Every inch of his body was perfect like a work of art. But in the center of his back, there was a dark red pattern. The pattern was like a red spider lily, but it also looked like a ball of blazing flame. Seeing this pattern, Yin Wuji's cold eyes suddenly lit up with a resplendent light. His expression changed from indifference and disgust to excitement. Holy Spirit, it's really the Netherworld Holy Spirit, although it's not complete. Come out. Luo Yunxiao tilted her head slightly and saw a handsome young man walking out from the corner of the room. His eyebrows were like swords, his eyes were like stars, his facial features were handsome, and his posture was tall and straight. He could really be considered a handsome man. Compared to Luo Yunxiao's appearance, it was far inferior. The man glanced at Luo Yunxiao's face and his eyes burned with jealousy. However, when his gaze fell on the dark red pattern, his jealousy instantly turned into greed and fervor. He walked quickly to Yin Wuji. Yuan Yi greets father and mother. Quickly get up. Yin Wuji and Fu Yushu hurried forward to help him up, looking at him with concern and love. Everyone outside the Nether Palace knelt on the ground again and chanted, "Long live His Majesty." They all had excited and eager smiles on their faces, as if they could already see the future of the Nether Realm dominating the Shoshen continent. Almost at the same time, in the most remote western palace of the Nether Realm, Kai Wen looked at the pale-faced young man lying on the bed. Her bell-like eyes were filled with anger and heartache. "Master, how could they treat you like that? You know how much pain and weakness you will feel if I take away the Holy Spirit in your body." Chapter 13:27. His back, which was originally as smooth as jade and had perfect lines, had now become a mess of flesh and blood. When the Holy Spirit could not be transferred smoothly, Yin Wuji had carved out the pattern from Luo Yunxiao's back. Kai Wen felt a heart-wrenching pain just by looking at the wound. However, the youth lying on the bed had an indifferent expression, as if he could not feel the pain at all. Or perhaps, he had already gotten used to this kind of pain. After the powder was sprinkled, the wound on Luo Yunxiao's back corroded bit by bit and then healed bit by bit. What kind of torture was it to have one's bones broken and one's skin peeled off, hovering between life and death? Kai Wen stared blankly at Luo Yunxiao's clothes and bedding that were drenched in sweat. His wet long hair hung down and stuck to his bitten lips. Blood flowed along the ends of his hair and onto the bed, blooming a beautiful red. Kai Wen could not bear it anymore. Tears fell from her big eyes. "Master, you are clearly their son. How could the Domain Master and Underworld Empress treat you like this?" Luo Yunxiao quietly lowered his eyes, his expression calm. He did not even let out a moan. "Right, I remember." Kai Wen suddenly recalled something as she shouted, "My Yang Yang refined many talismans back then, and gave many of them to you, Master. I remember my Yang Yang said that some talismans had a numbing effect." As Kai Wen spoke, she hurriedly took out the talismans from Luo Yunxiao's storage device. Mu Yang had given little martial uncle a lot of talismans. Or it should be said that the talismans she drew on a daily basis were accumulated to the point that it was impossible to calculate. Apart from the ones sold in Tianguang ruins, the rest were all given to the Xiao Yarrow sect. Basically, there were dozens or even hundreds of talismans. Some of them were refined according to the templates given by Luo Yunxiao. But there were also some very strange talismans that were created by Mu Yang. The numbing talismans that Kai Wen dug out had very strange talisman markings. It could be said that even Luo Yunxiao had never seen or heard of them. Kai Wen took out a numbing talisman and couldn't help but sigh, but no matter how talented my Yang Yang is in drawing talismans, she can only use the most ordinary spiritual power. This kind of spiritual power will not work on you, Master. Although she said that, Kai Wen still burned a talisman in her claws and pressed it on Luo Yunxiao's wound. However, Luo Yunxiao felt her body lighten almost as soon as the talisman was attached. The pain of having his skin peeled and his bones broken seemed to have left him in an instant. All that was left was the peace and tranquility after the storm. Luo Yunxiao reached out and took a tranquilizer talisman. She stared blankly at the yellow paper in her hand for a long time. He then closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep. Chapter 1328. He missed my Yang, and he missed the people of the Xiaoyaro sect. The immortal cultivation continent was high above mortals, and the nether realm stood at the top of the immortal cultivation continent. But to Kai Wen, it was not as interesting as being close to those noisy youths in the small branch of the Starry School. Even Luo Yunxiao's eyes flashed with a faint smile. "We will return in 2 days." He said return. Just then, an excited voice came from outside the door. "Greetings, Domain Lord." Very quickly, someone ran in hurriedly and looked at Luo Yunxiao with a face full of smiles and excitement. "Young Master Xiao, the Domain Lord is here to see you. This is the first time the Domain Lord has taken the initiative to see you. Quickly go out and welcome the Domain Lord. Young Master Xiao, you must please the Domain Lord this time. Who knows, your position might rise. Although young Master Yi has received the Divine Spirit's inheritance and is definitely the Divine Emperor of the Nether Realm, you are still the Domain Lord's son. But you are the son of the Domain Lord after all. Perhaps you can be made a Palace Lord or a Divine General." The servant chattered non-stop. On the surface, he seemed to be persuading, but his eyes were full of greed and desire for power. However, his voice came to an abrupt halt when he met Luo Yunxiao's indifferent and cold eyes. His face was also flushed. His expression was one of awe, amazement, and infatuation. Although young Master Xiao was also the young master of the Nether Realm, very few people knew of his existence. The Domain Lord and the Nether Empress both treated him as an invisible person. Even the Nether Realm's default surname of Yin was not allowed to be given to him. Luo Yunxiao's surname was Luo after his master who had passed away long ago. But young Master Xiao's peerless appearance and elegant bearing were not something that anyone could ignore. So even though his situation was so desolate, very few people dared to bully him in the nether realm. But the servant felt that the young Master Xiao who had returned this time was more awe-inspiring than ever before. It was even frightening. Father. Luo Yunxiao slowly bowed to the man in the room. Yin Wuji turned around and his gaze fell on his face. A complicated expression flashed in his eyes. There was shock, disgust, jealousy, and a hint of fear. However, when Luo Yunxiao raised her head, Yin Wuji had regained his usual aloof and indifferent appearance. How are your injuries? Luo Yunxiao raised her head in surprise. He really hadn't expected that Yin Wuji would actually care about his injuries. Father, I'm fine. After a pause, he continued, 3 days later, I want to return to the cultivation continent. Yin Wuji frowned and seemed to want to say something, but he did not object in the end. He quickly changed the topic. There's something I want to tell you. Do you still remember the engagement between the Nether Realm and the demon race? Luo Yunxiao was stunned. Because the polar domain was the largest, the Netherworld realm and the demon race had guards. Therefore, several decades ago, the Netherworld realm and the demon race had indeed set up a marriage contract under the hidden abyss. A moment later, Luo Yunxiao said, 10 years ago, the demon lord who made a marriage contract with my Netherrealm has already died. Isn't that marriage contract already invalid? Yin Wuji laughed softly, his expression full of disdain. The agreement back then was that the children of the Netherrealm and the royal family of the demon race would enter into a marriage alliance. The sudden death of the demon lord was merely a change of a child of the royal family. Chapter 1329. But as long as this marriage contract exists, the alliance between the demon race and the nether region will continue to be stable. Until Yune truly grasps the inheritance of the sacred spirit and steps on the polar domain. His gaze slowly turned to Luo Yunxiao, his face revealing a fatherly gentleness. For the future of the nether region, for your brother to become the Saint Emperor, you must marry the daughter of the demon lord. In the spirit pet space, Kai Wen roared in anger. She's the daughter of the demon lord, who has wandered somewhere and whose fate is unknown, yet she wants you, master, to marry her. Why? Why doesn't he let Yin Yune fulfill the marriage contract? They're going too far. Yin Wuji, of course, knew that his request was going too far. Once a marriage contract was made in the Shoshen continent, it was a contract approved by the heavenly Tao. Once it was broken, there would be punishment. The marriage contract between the nether region and the demon race was only a mutual benefit, a temporary compromise. There would be a day when the alliance between the nether region and the demon race would collapse and they would become like fire and water. At that time, the two parties to the marriage contract would become complete sacrifices. Someone had to be the sacrifice, but it definitely wasn't his precious son, Yin Yune. Not to mention, it was unknown whether the daughter of the demon lord was dead or alive. If the marriage contract was made and he couldn't find her, Luo Yunxiao would never be able to marry a wife in his life. Yin Wuji looked at Luo Yunxiao quietly. Even if he knew this request was too much, he believed that his son wouldn't refuse him. Ever since he was young, no matter how absurd or harsh the request was, as long as it was something he and the Nether Queen requested, he would do anything to achieve it. Even if it was to take away the inheritance of the sacred spirit from his body, he would agree. What about a mere marriage contract? However, just as Yin Wuji was waiting for the words, "Everything is up to father," he found that the other side was silent. The young man who had always been calm and submissive had unknowingly clenched his fists. In one of his palms, he tightly gripped a piece of talisman paper. That talisman paper had been soaked in his sweat and pierced, but he didn't feel it. Yunxiao? Yin Wuji frowned impatiently. Luo Yunxiao abruptly raised her head and stared fixedly into Yin Wuji's eyes. She said word by word, "I don't agree." "What did you say?" Yin Wuji could not believe his ears. "I said, I don't agree to this marriage." Luo Yunxiao's tightly clenched fist had already loosened. Her fingertips gently rubbed the damaged talisman paper in her palm. She slowly and clearly replied, Father, I can agree to any of your requests. But this is the only thing I cannot agree to. With that, he bowed slightly, turned around and left the room. Yin Wuji looked at his departing figure and could not recover his wits for a while. After a while, his face suddenly became so gloomy that it could drip water. Luo Yunxiao, you're actually rebelling against me. These words were said through gritted teeth, but there was also a deep fear in them. Yin Wuji's lips curled into a cold smile. You don't agree to this marriage? Heh, this is not up to you. Alcade Branch. Qi Huang slept all the way until the evening of the second day. Muyan is worried about whether or not there's anything wrong with his body. The inner core of the Fire Cloud Unicorn, the Fire Essence Vine, the Lee Fire Spirit Flower, these spirit herbs that were worth tens of thousands of crystals were priceless, but in Lord Seven Brilliance's eyes, they were only vulgar and ordinary playthings. Furthermore, the spirit medicines that were required for the Fire Dragon Pellet, even if they could be bought from the market or the academy, the price would be exorbitantly high. Muyan had to spend almost all of her current net worth to barely scrape it together. This guy actually dares to despise her for being poor. Qi Xiao Huang, why don't you go to heaven and stand shoulder to shoulder with the sun? Chapter 1331. The sound of the zither reverberates through the mountains and forests. The flowers and trees on the mountain sway gently, as if they've all come alive in an instant. Myriad plants resonating. As the sound of the zither spreads, the vegetation awakens. All the information about the spirit plants within 100 miles is transmitted into Muyan's mind. It's as if a map is formed in her mind, and the location of all the spirit herbs is marked. Muyan slowly opens her eyes and gently touches a spirit plant that's gently swaying beside her, even rubbing against her palm. She smiles, gets up and walks in one direction. Because of the feedback from the myriad plants resonating on the distribution of spirit herbs, Muyan quickly finds a lot of spirit herbs. But a large part of the spirit herbs are nidans or blood of spirit beasts, which can't be easily found by relying on the myriad plants resonating. Suddenly, the roar of a vicious beast reaches her ears. Even the earth seems to tremble. A powerful and ruthless pressure spreads out. The strength of this vicious beast is actually comparable to that of a gold core stage. A few wild rabbits and pheasants in the bushes were so frightened that they all fled, panic-stricken and uneasy. The roar is getting closer and closer. Ordinary people might have already fled in panic, but Muyan's eyes are bright, and her face is filled with joy. She strides towards the direction of the sound. If she's not mistaken, this should be the sound and breath of the Fire Cloud Unicorn. She was worried about not being able to get the Fire Cloud Unicorn's Nidan. This is really wearing out iron shoes in fruitless search, only to find it by chance. Muyan rushes for a moment, and soon sees the huge Fire Cloud Unicorn with flames all over its body. However, to her surprise, there's a teenager running wildly in front of the Fire Cloud Unicorn. The teenager looks up and meets Muyan's gaze. He stares blankly for a moment, then seems to think of something. He abruptly changes direction and continues to run desperately. Muyan raises her eyebrows. This doesn't want to implicate me. Perhaps it's because the speed slows down when it changes direction, so the Fire Cloud Unicorn finally catches up with the teenager. The teenager looks flustered, tripping over his feet and falling to the ground. His face is pale, and his eyes are filled with panic as he helplessly watches the Fire Cloud Unicorn's huge palm strike down. He can only close his eyes in despair. However, the expected pain doesn't come. The teenager only hears a loud bang, and grass and dust fly all over him. His body shivered, and he opened his eyes with trembling eyes. The flaming cloud unicorn, which had been baring its fangs and brandishing its claws just a moment ago, had already fallen to the ground, barely breathing. On the back of the gigantic beast stood a slender young girl. The sunlight shone on the girl's white dress. But no matter how white her dress was, it couldn't be whiter than her sparkling, translucent, porcelain-like skin. Her peach blossom-shaped eyes narrowed slightly, and the shimmering light within them was faintly discernible, causing her pitilessly beautiful features to seem even more captivating. The young man's pupils constricted, his heart thumping non-stop. Suddenly, he felt his breathing quicken, and his body softly fell to the ground. Mu Yang killed the fire cloud unicorn and was about to take its Niden. The young man who was being chased by the flaming cloud unicorn suddenly fell to the ground, his face pale and his body twitching. It can't be, the palm just now didn't hit him. Mu Yang quickly helps him up and clasps his wrist to feel his pulse. Qi Huang's mocking voice came from the space. Where did this kid come from? He couldn't have been scared to death, right? The spirit body delicately checked his pulse, and the young man's physical condition was clearly transmitted into his mind. The fire cloud unicorn's heartblood was the best medicine when it was still warm, and it could be sold for a lot of crystals. This vessel can ensure that your blood won't turn cold for 3 months. Take it. Give it to me. Mu Yang was really surprised this time. Why give it to me? The fire cloud unicorn was killed by little sister, and my life was also saved by little sister. Of course, I have to give this to little sister. The youth had a matter-of-fact expression on his face. Regardless of whether Mu Yang was willing or not, he directly stuffed it into her hands. Mu Yang hesitated for a moment, but in the end, she still put the bottle away. Thank you. The youth immediately smiles incomparably brightly. Chapter 1333. Your body is clearly so weak. Why did you come to the depths of Danyang mountain range? Isn't this courting death? The youth blushes, lowering his head in embarrassment. After a while, he takes out a small white tiger from his Chenkuan bag. The furry little tiger is especially cute, soft and small, only the size of 2 palms. When it was carried out, it used its claws to rub its eyes, letting out small whimpering sounds. Even if Muyin isn't a furry lover, nor is she a soft-hearted little girl, she can't help but feel a bit of fondness for this little tiger. I accidentally picked up this snow spirit tiger at the foot of Danyang Mountain. The youth strokes the little tiger's head, his voice gentle. It seems to have been separated from its mother, wandering alone at the foot of the mountain, and was almost shot to death, so pitiful. I know that the snow spirit tiger's nest is deep in the Danyang mountain range, so I wanted to bring it back and reunite with its mother. In order to reunite the little tiger with its mother, he doesn't even care about his own life. Muyin simply wants to sigh at this youth's stupidity. She thought that in the Xiuzhen continent, the strong are used to the weak being prey to the strong and deceiving each other. Even her family's Xiao Qi, who looks cute on the outside, is extremely black-bellied on the inside. Whoever wants to bully Luo, you will definitely be skinned alive. She didn't expect that there would be such a naive and sweet youth in this world. The youth hurriedly explains, in fact, it was the little tiger that saved my life at the beginning. If it hadn't appeared, I would have accidentally stepped into the trap. So in order to repay the favor of saving my life, I have to send it back. Saying that, he looks at Muyin with some embarrassment and expectation. Big sister, can I follow you until we find the snow spirit tiger's nest? I promise I won't give you any trouble. Muyin frowns slightly. The youth immediately says, Big sister, are you looking for elixirs in the Danyang mountain range? Since childhood, my body is special, I can sense the location of many elixirs. Big sister, I'll help you find elixirs, okay? Muyin finally agrees, letting the youth follow her as they continue to explore the depths of the Danyang mountain range. With the youth's guidance, Muyin's speed in finding elixirs has indeed increased a lot. In just half a day, she has actually collected more than 90% of the materials for the Dragonfire Dan. It was twice as fast as when she was alone. As night falls, Mu Yang sees that the youth's body is getting weaker and weaker. His face is pale and his forehead is sweating profusely. He found a lakeside, set up a tent, lit a bonfire, and rested temporarily. Little sister, look, this is the spiritual fruit I picked for you. Do you like it? The youth's voice came from behind her. Mu Yang turned around, but couldn't help but stare blankly. The dirt on the young man's face had been washed away, and his clothes had been changed. The moonlight fell on the young man's face, illuminating his delicate and pretty face with a hint of flirtatious charm. The young man's eyebrows were slightly long and narrow, with a high nose bridge and a tear-shaped mole under his left eye. She gave off a cold and aloof feeling, with a hint of evil charm. The youngster's appearance gives Muyin a somewhat similar feeling to Qi Huang. Although she wasn't as gorgeous and dazzling as Qi Huang, she had the same charm. The only difference was his eyes. The youth's eyes were so clear that the demonic charm on his body was suppressed. Chapter 1334. When the youth sees Muyin looking at him like this, his face turns slightly red, embarrassed and blushing. There was also a hint of joy on his face. He handed over some of the spirit fruits in his hand and eagerly looked at Mu Yang. "Big sister, do you want some?" Mu Yang took the spirit fruit and took a bite. It was sweet, juicy, and rich in spiritual energy. She couldn't help but praise it. The young man immediately looked as if he had obtained some incredible treasure, and his eyebrows and eyes curved into crescents. The mole under her left eye was also faintly discernible. Mu Yang sees that he's wholeheartedly holding the spirit fruits for her to eat, but she herself hasn't eaten a single one. She can't help but ask, "Why aren't you eating?" Hearing this, the young man's face showed a trace of sadness. Then, he smiled lightly and took out a fasting pill from his bosom. "I'll just eat this." Mu Yang suddenly understands. Because the young man's body wasn't good, there were many spirit foods that he couldn't eat. He could only eat relatively pure fasting pills without any impurities. Mu Yang takes the pills of fasting from his hand and takes out a few from the space to give them to him. The youth doesn't even think about it, and stuffs the fasting pill that Mu Yang gave him into his mouth. They were clearly both pills, but his fasting pill only had a bitter taste and a feeling of fullness that made one unable to feel happy. But when Muyin puts the elixir into her mouth, a strange taste explodes on the tip of her tongue. The feeling of his taste buds and stomach being filled together made the young man smile. Then, he suddenly opened his eyes wide. "It's so delicious. I've never eaten such a delicious fasting pill before." Mu Yang couldn't help but push his forehead. "You're so careless. How did you survive until now? You didn't even check to see if there was any poison in the pill given to you by others and just ate it so casually. But this was given to me by little Missy." The youth's eyes curved into a beautiful smile. "Of course Missy wouldn't harm me." As he spoke, he carefully put away the pill. On the third day, Mu Yang finally gathered all the spirit herbs required for the Dragonfire Dan. The snow spirit tiger was also sent back to its mother. She also wanted to bid farewell to the youth. The youth's face, which had been in high spirits yesterday, was now only left with loneliness and reluctance. He grabbed the corner of Mu Yang's clothes and looked straight at her. "Little sister, can I know your name?" When he said this, the young man's tone was very perturbed and full of anticipation. It was like a pitiful little beast that was about to be abandoned by someone. Mu Yang couldn't help but smile, looking at the youth with a very gentle gaze. She didn't think she was a good person. However, she had a very good impression of this naive and innocent youth. Chapter 1335. However, Muyin didn't expect that she would meet the youngster she had just met in the afternoon when she returned to the Yaoguang branch. Suzy. In the evening, a flying boat landed at the Alcade branch. The Tianshu branch college chief, Meng Baichuan, got off the boat and glanced at the 7 people from the Xiaoyaro sect. "Chief Meng, what brings you to the Alcade branch?" Yun Ruohan hurried forward to greet him, but her eyes were filled with caution. Could this college chief be here to find trouble with the Alcade branch again? Meng Baichuan looked around and saw that the area was vast but there were not many people. Then he thought about how such a rundown place was occupied by 2 top tutors, Luo Yunxiao and Tutor Mo. He was so angry that he wanted to beat his chest and stamp his feet. What a reckless waste of natural resources. What a reckless waste of natural resources. Such excellent tutors should be given to the Tianshu branch. He coughed softly and said with a sullen face, "Today, the exchange students from Lingwu and Fengtian came to study at the Starry School. One of them chose the Alcade branch. In the future, you must get along well with this cultivator. Don't embarrass the Starry School." As he spoke, a person walked down from the flying boat. A moon-white robe wrapped around his somewhat thin and weak body. His handsome and pale face immediately blossomed into a brilliant smile upon seeing Mu Yang. "Little big sister, I finally see you again." He ran in front of Mu Yang with large strides, as if he wanted to reach out and grab her clothes, but he was afraid of profaning them. He was at a loss as to what to do, but he couldn't hide his smile. "Suzy." Mu Yang looked at the young man in front of her in surprise. "Why are you here?" Suzy smiled embarrassedly. "Sister, I didn't expect such a coincidence. I'm an exchange student from the Fengtian school. I heard that you're in the Alcade branch, so I came over. I didn't tell you in the Danyang mountain range because I wanted to give you a surprise. Sister, you won't blame me, right?" Meng Baichuan snorted, waved his sleeves, and left on the flying boat. Who knew what was wrong with these people? They didn't want to stay in the Tianshu branch and came to the Alcade branch, a place where even birds wouldn't poop. After Meng Baichuan left, Yun Ruohan and the others immediately surrounded him. "Junior sister, do you know this kid?" Lung Yumor pulled Mu Yang to her side and glared at Suzy with an unfriendly expression. "Brat, who are you? Why are you pestering my junior sister? You even came to the Alcade branch. Tell me, what do you want?" Luo Yu hugged Mu Yang's hand and stared at Suzy warily. "Why are you calling me little sister so intimately? This is my 6th senior sister, not yours." Mu Yan laughs in spite of herself and pokes Luo Yu's forehead. Suzy didn't even bat an eyelid at their questions. Instead, he revealed a clear and bashful smile. "Senior brothers and senior sisters, my name is Suzy, and I'm from the Phoenix Sky Academy. A few days ago, I was being pursued by the Firecloud Unicorn in the Pilyong mountain range. Fortunately, Little Big Sister saved me. Little Big Sister is my savior. You are Little Big Sister's senior brothers and junior brothers, which means you are my senior brothers and senior sisters. Please take care of me in the future." Lung Yumor was about to say, "Who wants to take care of you?" Suzy took out a Chenkuan bag from his waist, opened it, and began to pour things onto the ground. Chapter 1336. There are low-grade crystals inside, but most of them are middle-grade crystals. The people of the Xiao Yarrow school are stunned. Suzy smiles even more kindly and warmly. "These are my show of filial piety to senior brothers and sisters. I hope you don't mind." "We don't mind, we don't mind." Luo Yu pounces on the crystal hill, so excited that she wants to roll around inside. We're rich, 6th sister, we're rich again." Lung Yumor tries her best to keep a straight face. "Don't think that using crystals to bribe us." Suzy takes out another Chenkuan bag. This time, all of them are 6th rank and above spirit tools, including Lung Yumor's favorite long blade. Even the painting tools that Chu Moli is interested in, he has prepared a set of extremely luxurious ones. This time, even Lung Yumor can't keep her cold face, holding the long blade with great interest. Mu Yang disapprovingly looks at Suzy. "Why are you giving so many things?" Suzy doesn't care, but they are all little sister's important brothers and sisters. I want to leave a good impression on little sister's family. Moreover, I have to stay in the Yarrow Guang branch, which is already very bothersome. If giving something can make everyone happy, wouldn't that be great? Mu Yang looks at his simple and innocent smile, and can't help but shake her head. This kid is really too naive and sweet. Back in the room, Mu Yang immediately starts to refine the Dragonfire pill. Although the Dragonfire pill's recipe is very complicated, and the required spirit herbs are very rare, but the method of refining is very simple. Mu Yang only spent an hour to refine 3 of them. But when she turns her head, she finds Qi Huang, who just a few days ago was urging her to quickly refine pills as if his butt was on fire. But he's in a trance at the side. He doesn't even know that she has already refined the dragon fire pill. Qi Huang, open your mouth. Hearing Mu Yang's voice, Qi Huang instinctively opens his mouth. A pill is immediately stuffed into his mouth. Ba ba ba, Jun Mu Yang, what did you give this sage to eat? Mu Yan gloomily looks at him. I worked hard in the Danyang mountain range for 2 days, and even spent all my spa to refine these 3 pills. Spit them out for me and see. This is a dragon fire pill. Qi Huang's eyes darted around in embarrassment as he swallowed the pill in his mouth. As the dragon fire pill entered his body, he felt that his originally powerless divine soul seemed to have solidified a lot. However, what makes Mu Yang feel strange is Qi Huang, who would usually pester her to spend more time with her in the space. But today, he anxiously urged her to go back and rest. Mu Yan looks at him suspiciously. Qi Xiaowang, what are you up to? Qi Huang looked at the sky and the earth, but he didn't look at her, his eyes darting around. In the end, she angrily says out of humiliation, this deity is a dignified ancient artifact spirit. Do I still need to report to you what I want to do? Jun Mu Yan, don't think that just because you're the master of the Tianmo Qin, you can control this deity. Mu Yang couldn't find any clues, so she had to leave the space and return to her room to rest. Who would have thought that in the middle of the night, Mu Yan would feel a gaze firmly locked on her in a daze? She abruptly awakens from her sleep. As soon as she opens her eyes, she finds a figure standing at the head of her bed, motionless. No matter how calm Mu Yan is, she's still startled by this scene. She promptly sits up on the bed. When she sees the person clearly, she can't help but frown. Suzy, what are you doing? You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.